Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Paula Muldoon, Vice President of Development and Community Engagement with the Ottawa Regional Cancer Foundation. And I can't tell you how much it means to us that you are here for our first ever virtual Cancer Champions Breakfast. While this isn't how any of us had hoped to take part in the breakfast this year, we are still so excited to be able to bring the same kind of inspiring, incredible stories we always share at the Cancer Champions Breakfast right to your home or office. The Ottawa Regional Cancer Foundation has been a champion for local cancer care and research for 25 groundbreaking years. You may ask yourself what that means for our community. It means that our generous donors, which includes many of you watching this morning, have come together to invest over $40 million into cancer research and clinical trials that are saving lives right here in our community. It means that you helped open the doors to Canada's first ever Cancer Survivorship Centre, the Maplesoft Gumdock Centre, where local families get the support and the resources that they need when they need it most. It means that when our loved ones hear the words, "You have cancer," they know they won't have to face it alone. We are so proud to say that all the money raised here this morning stays right here in our community. The Cancer Foundation is the only organization in Eastern Ontario working exclusively to improve cancer care locally. By being here with us this morning, you are prioritizing life-saving research projects, promising new clinical trials, and personalized care. That means that you are also prioritizing your 1 in 2 loved ones, your 1 in 2 friends, and your 1 in 2 neighbors who will face a cancer diagnosis at some point in their lifetime. And I'm sure you'll agree with me this morning that 1 in 2 just won't do. While the Ottawa Regional Cancer Foundation celebrates its 25th anniversary this year, what we are really celebrating is 25 years of you, of the generosity and the kindness of the individuals and organizations who are passionate about changing cancer outcomes for everyone. It couldn't have been done without the support of donors. We couldn't have done it without you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'd like to now introduce you to Catherine Clark, our host for this morning. Over to you, Catherine.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs, and a very warm welcome to each and every one of you to the Ottawa Regional Cancer Foundation's Cancer Champions Breakfast. Nous sommes très heureux de vous avoir parmi nous. Now, of course, we would normally all gather for this breakfast in one physical location, but like so much in the age of COVID-19, that plan had to change. So here we are at our first virtual Cancer Champions Breakfast in the history of the Ottawa Regional Cancer Foundation. What does virtual mean this morning? As you know, and probably appreciate, it means that no one had to fight traffic to get here this morning. It also means that we'll be none the wiser if you're enjoying a leisurely morning in your pajamas or eating breakfast in bed. But it also means that despite the many curveballs the year has thrown at us, you are here choosing to make a difference in the lives of thousands of families who are facing cancer in our community. For that, we are so grateful. Nous connaissons tous quelqu'un qui a été touché par le cancer. It is frankly impossible not to know someone affected by cancer, because this year alone, over 225,000 people across Canada will receive a cancer diagnosis. This year alone. And we know that this year comes with its own particular challenges because 50% of cancer patients have or will experience a disruption in their cancer treatment because of the impacts of COVID-19. Oui, nous devons être réalistes sur le défi que le cancer continue de poser pour nous et pour nos proches, but this is a morning to focus on the positive, and that's the potential we all have to change someone's life. Dr. John Bell is a senior scientist at the Ottawa Hospital Research Institute. He's a professor of medicine at the University of Ottawa and the director of the Biotherapeutics program for the Ontario Institute for Cancer Research. As a cancer researcher, he has pioneered the use of oncolytic viruses to treat cancer here in Ottawa, and he is head of the Canadian Oncolytic Virus Consortium. Dr. Bell, thank you so much for joining us here this morning.
My pleasure.
So, Dr. Bell, I'd like to start with you in this conversation because the goal of funding research and clinical trials is really to try and ensure that the work goes from the lab to ensuring that the patient has a better prognosis. So basically bench to bedside. Can you give us a little bit of an idea of what cancer researchers like yourself are working on these days that really shows real promise in treating cancer?
Sure. I think what's really exciting is the concept of using the patient's own immune system to attack their cancer, the so-called immunotherapy. And what's really exciting about that is we're starting to see patients who really have a dismal prognosis actually have great outcomes. So one example is a concept called CAR-T, where you actually take the patient's immune cells out, so-called T cells, and then we engineer them in the test tube, put them back into the patient, and they're able to then attack the patient's cancer. And this has worked extremely well. Some forms of leukemia, we're seeing an 80% response rate for people who normally had no options at all. So this is a really exciting time for all of us because we see this concept of having the patient cure their own disease with their own immune system as a real powerful tool to change the way things are being treated in cancer.
Can I get you to expand a little bit on that, Dr. Bell, in terms of telling us about how immunotherapies really work? Because that sounds pretty remarkable if you're saying that patients' own bodies can start doing this work themselves.
Yeah, no, I mean, the thing that's challenging about cancer, so the hard part about cancer is that when a cancer arises, it arises from your own body. So it's your own cells that have sort of developed a mutation or a genetic abnormality that makes them form a cancer in the first place. So that makes it very hard to discriminate between the normal tissues of your body and the cancer. However, our immune systems are amazing. So we have immune systems which allow us to survive on this planet because our immune systems can recognize even very, very small changes. And the other thing that's neat about your immune system is it changes over time. So you might get a cold one day and your immune system reacts against that cold virus, but then you might get another infection later on the week and it adjusts itself to attack that particular pathogen as well. So all we're doing is taking that beautiful, sophisticated machine which is inside all of us and training it and teaching it to recognize the cancer it's formed. So now it can go and very selectively attack the cancer and none of your normal tissues, and so you have a very targeted therapy. So it's really exciting because now it allows you to get a personalized therapy for that patient's tumor using their own immune system.
Right. And a lot of your work revolves around oncolytic viruses. What are those and why is this work important?
So what we decided to do many years ago now was to try to find, again, a very targeted therapy, something that would discriminate between the cancer tissue and the normal tissue. And what we discovered is that there are particular kinds of viruses. So viruses are parasites that really need to live inside our cells to replicate themselves. And we were able to take some viruses that were actually very safe, and again, in the test tube, we could engineer them and change them so that the only thing they can be a parasite of is a cancer cell. So again, the same concept of a very targeted therapy where you then would inject the patient with a virus, the virus would go around the patient, and when it found a cancer that it could grow in, it would then replicate it with and destroy that cancer. But what was even more exciting about it, we found out later on, was in fact, when it did this, it also stimulated the immune system. So these two things came together very nicely. And now the immune system recognized this infected tumor as a foreign body and began to attack it and eliminate it.
Can we talk about the effects on the cancer patient themselves as well because of these new types of therapies? Because a lot of what's associated with cancer treatment in common thinking is illness. You become very ill because of the treatment. How might that be different with these new therapies?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So as you well know, as everyone knows, you hear about someone who's got a chemotherapy treatment, you think, that's going to be bad. They're going to be very sick, as you said. They might lose their hair. And that's because those therapies are not as selective as we need. So not only do they attack the cancer, but they unfortunately also attack your normal tissues. And so you become nauseous. You may not be able to eat for a few weeks and lose weight. It's just because the therapy is not as targeted as we want. On the other hand, if you use something like an immunotherapy or a viral therapy, which is really designed and engineered to be very selective, the only thing it attacks is the cancer, and these side effects are not as bad by any stretch. Now, in the first early phases of immunotherapy, we saw some problems with it. We saw some patients have side effects we didn't like, but we already began to tune those down and make it so these therapies are so selective, patients do not have those kinds of side effects. They don't get immunosuppressed because, in fact, the idea is to increase the activity of their immune system, and so we think they have a much better chance of having a great outcome.
What you're describing is so remarkable, and anyone who has been through cancer or who has a loved one who has been through cancer and they've watched the journey and how difficult it is must really rejoice when they hear some of the things that you're describing. Can you talk to us about how the Ottawa Regional Cancer Foundation has helped you in the work that you're doing, and give us a sense of what you would do if you didn't have the support of the donors to this organization?
Yeah, this foundation has been really key to my research program. So I originally had a research laboratory at McGill in Montreal. It's a fantastic place to have a research lab. But I came to Ottawa because it's a beautiful city, but aside from that, there was an idea that they would create a setting where we could take our discoveries, as you said at the beginning, take your discoveries from the lab and put them into the clinic, do this a bench to bedside translation. And that was something I didn't have access to in Montreal. That was really supported by the people of Ottawa. And one of the main donors initially was, in fact, through this foundation, where they gave us the money we needed to create a laboratory that's involved in manufacturing some of these new ideas we had. So if we wanted to make a new virus to put into patients, we had to have a way to produce it. So we built here what's called a manufacturing suite. And some of the seed money to make that happen came from this foundation, from the donations of the people in Ottawa. I mean, all of research is really funded by the generosity of Canadian citizens, whether it's through their taxes or through donations to foundations like this Ottawa Cancer Foundation or the Terry Fox Foundation or whatever. That's how the money comes about for research to happen. And so it's really because of that generosity that we've been able to do the things we've done.
You must get asked this a lot, but how close are we to a cure for cancer?
I do get asked that a lot. And the answer is we're a lot closer than we were. When I started in this endeavor, I would go to meetings around the world and we'd compare our results, and it was really a little bit depressing because we didn't see changes in the outcomes for patients. But in the last, I'd say 5 to 10 years, with the development of immunotherapy, we're now seeing situations where people are actually responding very well and apparently cured of their disease, even though normally they wouldn't have a chance to survive. A great example is, I mentioned leukemia, but another one is melanoma, where now we have new immunotherapies for melanoma, and patients who had no chance to survive are now having, as far as we can tell, cures from these treatments. So things have really changed a lot. For some diseases, I think we do have cures, but not enough, and so we need to do more. And I think what's exciting is we're so close now, we just need to keep putting some resources towards this, because we're going to be able to take our learnings and convert them to be useful in many kinds of cancers.
You were just talking about attending international conferences, and I understand that our research institute is among the top 3% in the world. How should donors feel about the fact that when they're giving locally here in their community, they're also having a global impact too?
I think they should be incredibly proud of it. I mean, the world has changed so much with the internet and the way we communicate and travel. And so all the work that we do is actually almost instantaneously shared with the rest of the world. And that's why the field has advanced so quickly. So, you know, a discovery made in Ottawa impacts the world, there's no question. And we're certainly now recognized for the work we've done with these virus-based therapeutics. And people come to us. I think the other thing that's been really great for me personally is that we now have fantastic people from outside the country who come and work with us because they want to come here. And my lab has just been enriched by that, and lots of great, smart people from all over the world who come to work with us. But it's been a really tremendous thing. So a small investment here actually has big payouts, not just for Canadians and people in Ottawa, but I think the entire world.
Given all that you've just said and all the work that you are doing with your team, what gives you hope?
Well, I think it's, you know, for me, I can see how things have changed. It's so dramatically. It's really, throughout my career, it's you know, it was a slow slog. A lot of things had to be learned. But there were some real watershed moments where we started to really understand our immune systems better. And once that happened, we could see this, we can turn the tables on this disease. We can actually make new therapies that are going to be effective for people. And I think that is something that really motivates myself and all the people who work with me at the Cancer Center, because we see there is something that's going to happen. Things have already happened. In fact, you know, sometimes I think we get a little bit, where I work, we sort of forget the accomplishments that we've made. Things have really changed a lot because we're always striving to do better. And we're now treating patients at the Cancer Center with, as I mentioned, this CAR T therapy for leukemia. It was the first made in Canada CAR T therapy. Dr. Natasha Kekri is one of my colleagues, a bright young woman who's leading that clinical study, and we're really excited about how that's going forward. This is all things that happened because we had the infrastructure and the team to make this happen.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ballin. I want to take this opportunity to thank our frontline health workers. There aren't any words to express our gratitude to the men and women who continue their work within our healthcare system, despite the great risks to themselves and their families. The pandemic has shone a bright light on how critical their jobs are and how much we expect of them in a crisis, and they have more than delivered. This is also a morning to celebrate what we've achieved so far in terms of exceptional cancer care in the region. And it's an opportunity to look ahead to what more we can do to ensure better outcomes for those in active care now and for those who will receive a cancer diagnosis this year. So as we begin this Cancer Champions Breakfast, let's remember that this event has raised more than $4 million for cancer care in our region. That's something to be proud of. We've come a long way since the foundation first embarked on its goal to help local families facing cancer 25 years ago. Take a look. What a great reminder that we're all in this fight against cancer together, and that together is how we're going to make a difference. I mentioned earlier that this breakfast has raised an incredible $4 million for cancer care. And the reason the Ottawa Regional Cancer Foundation has been able to do that is through the generosity of people just like you. People who choose to volunteer their time, their efforts, and also to donate their money to this cause. One of those remarkable volunteers is Ian Sherman, who in his day job is best known to many of us as EY's distinguished tax partner and also chair of the Ottawa Board of Trade. However, Ian has truly dedicated countless hours to worthy charitable initiatives in our community, including as chair of the Cancer Champions Breakfast Leadership Council. Ian, good morning. It is just so wonderful to have you here, and congratulations on getting to this point with the breakfast. I'm pretty sure that a virtual event is not what you were intending when you signed on to this at the very beginning. How are you feeling this morning now that we're at this point of the breakfast?
Well, first of all, good morning, Catherine. It's wonderful to be with you here this morning. We share, our two families, such a history together, and being here with you makes it that much more special. And yes, this has been a journey, and certainly a journey well beyond what I was expecting this commitment to be. Although, like so many other things in life, this has become a labor of love, working with the wonderful people at the Ottawa Regional Cancer Foundation and all of the volunteers, our leadership council who have stepped forward for this effort. We had certainly been hoping that we would be meeting as a community together in person, physically at the Infinity Center back on May the 13th. And certainly the outbreak of COVID and all the implications to our community, to our society, has derailed us a little bit. However, I think we are either the first or among the first within this community to launch a virtual breakfast, and the effort has been so worthwhile for such a worthy cause.
You are involved in so many important and worthy events. Ian, why, when you received the call about this one, the Cancer Champions Breakfast, did you say yes?
It's a great question, and I really start with the fact that I'm very privileged, like many of us in our community. I call it the gift of Ottawa, and full disclosure, I borrowed those words from our former mayor, Jim Durrell, and I use them all the time now because it's such a privilege to live in this community. And with that privilege comes, in my world, the language of leadership. That is a very, very important language to me. It's a language that allows me to leverage the privilege of residing in Ottawa, being connected to the community, whether it's through family, friends, colleagues, in the office, outside of the office. And I've become extremely passionate about much of the work that I've been able to do, and a lot of it on the leadership level, whether it's my involvement business-wise through the Board of Trade, whether it's my involvement within the Jewish community, whether it's my more recent involvement with the Ottawa Gatineau Youth Foundation. And I've always, in particular, had this passion for healthcare. And it's rather interesting because the whole world of healthcare is so scientific and technological. And those who know me best know that I am not a scientific, technological kind of guy. Having said that, healthcare permeates everything. Healthcare is everything. And I became involved a number of years ago with the Regional Cancer Foundation as first a guest to the breakfast, and then as a table captain. Paula Muldoon called on me for some leadership of this breakfast. And quite honestly, I couldn't say no. Healthcare is so important to this community. It always has been, it always will be. We have tremendous needs, and I'm here to help. So it's a language of leadership. I'm just trying to do my part.
Since you agreed to do your part as a community leader, you've also had some news within your own family that has made this a very personal commitment to you. Are you comfortable telling us a bit about that?
Yeah, it's, like everyone else in our community, I'm sure like everyone else in the world, we all know people who have suffered from this horrible disease and have succumbed to this horrible disease. I can think of colleagues, I can think of some family members, I can think of friends. I have to say that, most recently, and this was after I took up the charge to chair the breakfast, about 6 or 7 weeks ago, my father-in-law was diagnosed with cancer. And he's on a journey right now. And my wife and sons and daughter-in-law and our family are on a coaching journey right now. It's been an emotional period. It's added a new dimension, not just to chairing this breakfast, it's added a new dimension to the world of cancer, which is so pervasive. And we'll see what the prognosis is down the road. I'm not going to deny my father-in-law's in a battle, and we'll help him through it. But yeah, this has become very personal.
Ian, thank you for sharing that story with us. We're terribly sorry to hear about your father-in-law's diagnosis, and also our hearts are with your family too.
Thank you, Catherine. And I guess if I could leave one final message, I would ask everyone, to the extent that you can, to join this journey. Previous to a few weeks ago, this was more of a communal journey. Now for me, it's become a personal journey. Please, please help us conquer this horrible disease.
We want to thank the entire Cancer Champions Breakfast Leadership Council and all of the wonderful table captains who've dedicated time and energy to making this event a success today. We've already talked this morning about the fact that almost every single one of us has been touched by cancer, either personally or in terms of someone we love. And it's often that experience that drives community leaders to get involved and drives initiatives to help us improve cancer care in our region. We're going to hear from one such champion now who really has had an impact on our city.
I'm Chuck Merovitz. I'm a lawyer, a husband, a father, a son, and most importantly, a grandfather. I started getting involved with the Ottawa Regional Cancer Foundation because I experienced the impact of the disease at an early age with someone I loved very much. 15 years ago, I was in Palm Springs, California, and I drove by a park that said Cancer Survivors Park. I was struck by the juxtaposition of cancer and survivor. I always thought they were mutually exclusive. I was so impressed by it, I thought we needed one here in Ottawa. And I worked with a group of dedicated volunteers to see it become a reality. It's incredible to see what can happen when the community comes together. The park is one example of that, and it inspired me to keep giving, because I realized just how important individual efforts can help to bring support and new technologies to the city. It matters a lot. Because while at first you may do this as a volunteer to help improve the lives of others, you just never know when you or your family may end up needing that support as well.
Chuck, we're really glad that you're here, and it'd be great to have you talk a little bit about the fact that cancer touched your family very personally and at a very young age. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So my first experience with cancer, I was only about 10 years old or so, and the mother of a friend of mine died of cancer. And in those days, people didn't really talk about cancer a lot. It was sort of the big C, and for some reason, it was somebody was diagnosed with cancer, you never really sort of heard about it. But I was probably only about 20, 21 when my mother got diagnosed with cancer, and I watched her diminish from a very robust, slightly overweight lady to just skin and bones in a year and a half. And then of course she died. And so I'd always had this great fear of cancer. And then I was in Palm Springs, and we passed this park that said Cancer Survivors Park. And we were on our way to our golf game, and I said to my wife, I said, I've never seen those two words together. I said, I want to go back and see what this park's all about. So in the process of trying to bring that park to Ottawa, I learned a lot more about cancer, and I was fortunate enough to spend some time with Richard and Annette Block, who were the benefactors of the parks. And at that time they had benefited about 22 parks across the U.S. And so I became more optimistic about cancer. And then I got connected with the foundation who were going to take over the task of building the park and operating it. And then I got involved with the Cancer Foundation, and there was a group of lawyers who were trying to raise money for a robotic machine called the CyberKnife, which actually isn't the knife at all, but it provides very high doses of radiation, but it's pinpointed radiation, so they don't worry about collateral damage to organs nearby or tissue nearby. And so one of the group, David Sinclair, his brother John Sinclair, had been trained on this CyberKnife in California and came back to Ottawa and had been promised that he would be able to get a CyberKnife for his use. So in any event, so one of the lawyers knew that I had been involved in the Cancer Survivors Park, and so he approached me to ask me if I would help raise money for the CyberKnife. And so in doing so, I'm a salesman at heart, and so I know that you've got to know your product. So I read almost everything I could find on CyberKnife, and so I was really impressed with what it could do. And interestingly enough, at that time, it was only in clinical trials for prostate cancer. So this group of lawyers contacted me, and we raised enough money that the hospital required us to raise in order for them to provide the additional funds needed to buy the CyberKnife. And that's how the CyberKnife came to Ottawa.
How many cities in Canada have a CyberKnife?
So Ottawa was the second city at the time. McMaster in Hamilton was the first. And since then, I think there's only about another 3 or 4 cities that have the CyberKnife.
You fundraised to bring this here.
Yes.
It is here.
Yes.
We are incredibly fortunate to have it here, but you were bringing it here from the perspective of trying to help other people.
Yes.
Now there's a personal connection for you as well, though. Can you talk to us about that?
Yes, sure. So I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and it's a relatively mild, I guess, at this time. So initially, we did what's called active surveillance. So we just monitored my PSA scores. And by the way, I encourage everybody, all the men, to get PSAs and to watch their scores because it's a very good indicator of whether or not you might have prostate cancer. So in any event, we monitored the PSAs for a while, and then as they rose to a high level, it was determined that I should get a biopsy, and the biopsy determined that I should probably do something other than active surveillance. And so I was referred to a surgeon, and the surgeon was explaining all of the ramifications, I guess, of the surgery. And I wasn't that keen on surgery. I've never spent a day in a hospital. And so I asked him, based on my, what I knew about CyberKnife, so I said, well, could CyberKnife be an option here? And he said, yeah, maybe it could. He said, so I'll send it off to the Dr. Sean Malone, who does CyberKnife treatment, and see what he thinks. And so fortunate for me, he did send it off to Dr. Malone, and I knew Dr. Malone from when I was raising money for CyberKnife. And Dr. Malone said, yeah, he said, you're a really good candidate for it. And so choices with prostate cancer are surgery, conventional radiation. Conventional radiation is about 35 bouts of radiation over about maybe a 7-week period, or CyberKnife. CyberKnife is 5 treatments over about a 10-day period. So I've now completed my 5 treatments, very minimal side effects. I've been able to work each day after treatment I've been able to golf almost every other day after treatment. And it's amazing. In fact, one of my golf games, I played with a guy who had prostate cancer and had the regular bouts of radiation, and he couldn't believe the difference in how it affected him and how it affected me.
You have to imagine that anyone who hears your story is going to wonder why this isn't the default option for them in terms of cancer treatment. How do you, what would you like to see in the future? I mean, part of what we're doing here this morning is talking to people about how incredibly valuable their support is. Given your own personal experience, what do you want them to take away from your story?
Right. So there's a couple of things that I want them to take away. One is, of course, the importance of watching your PSAs. And the other is the importance of fundraising for the Ottawa Regional Cancer Foundation, because you never know. I mean, you do it altruistically, but you never know when it might actually benefit you or someone you love. There's so much cancer care and research that's done because of what the Ottawa Regional Cancer Foundation contributes. And people don't realize it, but Ottawa is known as a center of excellence for cancer care and research. And I encourage everybody to support it. And whatever you were thinking of giving to support it, I think you should give more.
Thank you so much, Chuck, for sharing your experiences with us and reminding us why we need to continue to support exceptional cancer care here in Ottawa and in the surrounding region. We are truly grateful to you for all that you're doing. Events like the Cancer Champions Breakfast would not be possible without the help and generosity of exceptional sponsors who believe as deeply in this cause as we do. So thank you to all of our sponsors. Votre soutien est d'une importance cruciale et fait une réelle différence dans la vie des hommes et des femmes vivant avec le cancer dans notre communauté. I urge you to click on the links on the event main page and learn more about each of these companies so dedicated to this cause. Now we want to take a moment to hear from somebody you likely all know, but who's new to the Ottawa Regional Cancer Foundation. Having called Ottawa home for more than 2 decades, Michael Maidment has served our community in many different ways over the years. Perhaps best known for the great work he did at the helm of the Ottawa Food Bank, Michael has dedicated countless hours to initiatives which have improved the lives of people throughout our city. Michael is now supporting our community's health and well-being as the newly appointed President and CEO of the Ottawa Regional Cancer Foundation. Michael, we are so thrilled to welcome you.
Thank you, Catherine. I'm so glad to be joining you today at my first Cancer Champions Breakfast and my very first event as the new President and CEO of the Ottawa Regional Cancer Foundation. Let me start by saying thank you. We're grateful you've taken time out of your day today, maybe getting up a little earlier than normal, to join us this morning for this important virtual edition of the Cancer Champions Breakfast. With nearly 50 events canceled this year due to COVID-19 pandemic, it was essential for us to find a way to bring this important event to you. Now, here we are, joining you in your own home or office to share inspirational stories from cancer survivors, researchers, and professionals who are making incredible strides in local cancer care. The results have been nothing short of groundbreaking. Some of the deadliest types of cancer have become treatable, and new treatments and surgical techniques are helping patients live 5, 10, or even 15 years longer. Innovations like immunotherapy are giving patients less intense treatment options with fewer side effects. New services like cancer coaching are helping patients better manage their disease, along with the stress and anxiety that comes with it. This is all thanks to people like you who have seen the incredible need that exists in your community and who have stepped forward to meet it. By joining us for breakfast this morning, you are ensuring our friends, family, and neighbors always have access to the most effective new therapies and the best cancer care close to home. As a champion for local families facing cancer, you've reminded them that here in Ottawa, no one must face cancer alone. We're so pleased to have you join us this morning at this special virtual edition of the Cancer Champions Breakfast. Thank you.
Nobody knows the importance of innovation like my next guest, Dr. John Sinclair. Dr. Sinclair is a neurosurgeon at the Ottawa Hospital and has personally been part of bringing incredible advancements to Ottawa that help treat patients with brain cancer. This includes the CyberKnife, a radiosurgery robot which is more powerful, more accurate, and more versatile than regular radiation, as well as a groundbreaking surgical technique called fluorescence-guided surgery that uses a special drug and microscope to illuminate cancer cells within the brain. I am really thrilled that Dr. Sinclair is here for a chat with us this morning. Thank you so much, Dr. Sinclair, for being here, but also for the work that you're doing in our community. And I'm glad that you are able to take the time to chat. And it would be great to have a conversation with you about brain cancer in particular and why it's so difficult to treat.
Thank you for having me. Brain cancer historically has been an extremely difficult aspect of cancer to treat because of a couple of things. One being the obvious importance of the brain, and that dealing with cancer in the brain involves having to try and remove it or to treat it in a way that doesn't damage the surrounding functions of the brain.
So, Dr. Sinclair, if we're lucky, most of us will not have to know what brain surgery is like. But you being here this morning are providing us with a really rare opportunity to get a sense of what it's like, not just for you as a surgeon in the operating room, but also for your patient. What happens?
Bringing someone to the operating room for brain surgery in itself is an absolutely traumatic experience. When I tell a patient and their family that they are going to require an operation, it becomes even more, I think, scary for patients when I tell them that their surgery will be done awake. And that brings forth all sorts of connotations with respect to ideas of what that may be like. So the first part of when I meet with the patient, it's to try and explain from start to finish what that will involve. I think the most important thing that I try and emphasize is that surgery in general, I think, is a scary concept because of loss of control. When someone comes to the operating room to have surgery with an anesthetic where they're asleep, they really don't know what is going to happen. And being awake, the first thing I say is that you are going to be in control of your operation. You and I are going to work together with the team of people that are there to make sure that your surgery is done in the best way possible and in the safest way possible. And then it's a very much an interactive process. I explain what I'm going to do. If I'm going to be doing something, I will ask the patient if they're okay with that. If they're not, we'll give them medicines to maybe very gently put them to sleep in a light sleep for a few minutes. But in many cases, by them understanding what I'm about to do, and for me to show them in some cases what I'm going to do in terms of showing them an instrument or what have you, it really takes away the fear. And we work together. And so during this time, we're playing Name That Tune, we're talking about music. One of our anesthetists is a sommelier. Sometimes he'll actually pull a screen up. If they're talking food, they'll be talking about something that I know nothing about. And they'll talk about wine lists for something that they were talking about cooking. It's very interactive, and we kind of just go where the patient wants to go. And that allows us to keep someone in the most comfortable way possible. If they need to speak to family members, we actually have a phone where they can phone home if they need reassurance. More often, it's the opposite, that the family members need the reassurance that their loved one is okay, and then we do the surgery.
So, if you told me that you were going to operate on me awake, I probably, might not jump at the opportunity. What's the benefit of awake surgery?
In the past, surgery was considered successful if a patient woke up, was able to talk, tell us the date, move their arms and legs, and get up and walk. But we know, as we've made cancer therapy better, that patients now are living years, in many cases, after their initial surgery. And a subset of those patients would never be able to go back to work, had interpersonal difficulties with friends or families or marriages breaking up because they felt different. And that in part is related to how we did surgery and how some of the other treatments have been done. And we've now understood that there are better ways of doing surgery to try and preserve these functions. And as I said, this is still very much in the early days. But when we're able to have someone awake, I can monitor or map the brain for any function that I choose to, particularly if surgery requires me doing something that I wasn't completely expecting. The patient, if you consider the brain a computer, the brain is online for me to test in any way possible. In the past, brain tumor surgery has been performed in the context of a technique called a lesionectomy, where we find the abnormality and remove just the abnormality. But as I mentioned earlier, with fluorescent-guided surgery, we know in many cases there are cells that are extending well beyond into normal parts of the brain. To go and address that aspect of a tumor is really where we're at now. And techniques such as mapping the brain, performing mapping in a way that we make, in essence, almost a little fence all the way around where the tumor is, where function lies, and then we work to remove everything inside of the fence, is the new way of doing brain tumor surgery. And awake surgery really allows us the possibility to treat a tumor in a way that we've never done before.
That's absolutely extraordinary. And it's incredible to think that there are innovations like that which are in practice now in use in Ottawa. Are there also other practices that are similar to it or even better than it, which you see coming, which you'd like to bring to the city?
Well, one of the things that you touched on earlier was the use of fluorescent-guided surgery. And this has actually been around for a number of years in Europe. And when I had read about it, I decided that I thought that we should have this here in Ottawa. And essentially the technique that we use to remove a tumor involves using our eyes, normal light to illuminate the tumor, often with a big operating microscope so that we can see a tumor in much more detail. But in many cases, the tumor cells, particularly on the periphery of the tumor, may blend into normal tissue, and it's very difficult to decide where the tumor actually ends. This technique allows us to give a patient a drug, which is actually a drink that the patient drinks before surgery, and that concentrates in brain cancer cells. And then when we turn on a special light on our microscope, after a number of hours, it actually allows these cells to glow. And so at surgery, what happens is we remove tumors in a traditional way, but then by turning on this wavelength of light, we can see if we've left any tumor cells behind. And that sounds very far-fetched, but in actual fact, it's amazing that we have, over the decades and decades of advances in medicine, still relied just on a surgeon's eyes to determine where a tumor is. This takes us to the next level, and this is an exciting development in cancer surgery, as there are now different compounds that are being designed for different types of tumors and cancers. And I think this is the way tumor surgery will progress in the future.
Dr. Sinclair, I'd like to end with a question which reflects not just the fact that you are a surgeon, but you're also a person. And in those dual capacities, you have a medical commitment to the people that you treat, but you also develop personal relationships with them, and some of them are your friends. You've recently had an experience which has reinforced why this continued focus on cancer care is so important in our region. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Having grown up in Ottawa and come back to Ottawa at the end of all my training, I have the rare privilege to be treating a lot of people that I knew when I was younger. I've treated teachers from when I was little. I've treated friends, colleagues at the hospital. And those all come with a small component of my own sadness as I see those people battle through their disease. It is ultimately my privilege to be able to provide a friendly face, which I think adds just a little bit more as patients go through this journey. How I deal with it, I look to the strength that those people look to me with, which allows me to push forward, to never give up, to look to the next thing that I want to bring here. Well, all the barriers that go along with that, particularly in Canadian healthcare, but not to give up and to overcome them. And it's the people around me here at the hospital that have given me the strength to accomplish what we've accomplished thus far. So there's a little bit of every patient in me, and their strength is really what gives me my strength to keep going forward.
Thank you for the work that you do, Dr. Sinclair.
My brother.
Before we even sat down for breakfast this morning, a truly special group of people had already made sure that the Cancer Champions breakfast would be a success. These are the incredible donors who stepped forward to support our 25 by 25 campaign, donating a minimum of $25,000 each towards improving local cancer care in honor of the Cancer Foundation's 25th anniversary. Please join us in extending our most heartfelt thanks to these generous individuals, families, and organizations for the incredible commitment they've made. La Fondation du cancer de la région d'Ottawa comprend qu'un diagnostic de cancer affecte toute la famille et elle est fermement engagée à faire en sorte que personne n'ait à subir le cancer seul. That's why the Cancer Foundation has established cancer coaching with the goal of helping cancer patients, family members, and caregivers face and overcome their fears and frustrations about a cancer diagnosis.
So our cancer coaching service is free to clients thanks to the generous donors of this community who fund and donate to the Cancer Foundation. So this service became available in 2011 when the Survivorship Center opened, and up to this point we've served over 4,000 families, and many of them are also caregivers, so not just the person experiencing cancer, but their family members, loved ones who are supporting them. It's a challenge for them as well. COVID-19 certainly was a challenge. Now, we were fortunate to have a platform to deliver coaching that was able to have people connect virtually. So we have instant messaging, video chat, and we're so grateful for the donor that supported that because we were ready when COVID struck. We were able to switch immediately to video chats, phone conversations, instant messaging, and keep our clients safe and at home where they need to be, yet still accessing the service they needed incredibly at this time due to their stress and fear of what was happening. So under normal circumstances, people do enjoy coming in for the face-to-face. Our Maplesoft Gumdocks Center for Cancer Survivorship is a beautiful place. It's welcoming, it's very homey, it's very comfortable. And aside from the one-to-one coaching, there were support groups that met here. We offered group coaching, there were physical exercise activities for post-cancer survivors. All kinds of amazing things take place in this building. So it's unfortunate those have all had to pause, but many of them have moved to virtual services as we have. But it's a beautiful space, and we look forward to being able to welcome people back. So the stress levels and emotions are quite high when you hear that you have cancer anyway. So you add a pandemic on top of that, and there were a couple of weeks where we had double the number of coaching conversations that we normally would, and that was to help people address their anxiety, their distress levels. So it was important we were here, it was important they could safely access us, and it was seamless. We were there when they needed us.
Jocelyne and Wayne Liko have had a direct and personal experience with the power of a cancer coach, and I'm really so pleased that they're both here today to help us understand more about this relatively new support offered to cancer patients, to their families, and also to their loved ones. Jocelyne and Wayne, welcome. Jocelyne, you learned you had cancer. It must have been a huge shock. I wonder if you can tell us about what your reaction was when you heard the news.
My initial reaction was disbelief. I had been taking such good care of myself. You know, with raising the kids, you kind of neglect yourself a little bit, and I was at a stage where I was really doing great with nutrition and exercise, and I was feeling wonderful. So it just kind of came out of left field and totally unexpected. There'd never been any history of cancer in my immediate family. And so, yeah, it was a bit of a shock. And, the first thing was, just take a deep breath and listen to what the doctor has to say. But it was kind of just a bit of a blur.
How did you talk to your family about it?
That was the hardest part, was not knowing how to approach them. And it just so happened that Wayne and my eldest son were on the phone with me when my doctor called. And so it was almost like we were having a bit of a conference call. And so they knew. I didn't have to tell Wayne, which was kind of a blessing. But with respect to the kids, yeah, that was a hard one. How do you tell them something that is so, like, you're so fearful yourself and you don't want that to come across as you're telling them. When you think of your kids, you think about being their support, not the other way around. And so anyways, it was hard, but it was one child at a time, so that was good.
Wayne, can you talk to us about what your reaction was? Because as Jocelyne described, you were on the phone when she got the news too.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely the the disbelief, and I don't know if it's a male reaction, but it's we're gonna fix this, we're gonna fight this, and we're gonna, you're kind of taking it on as if you're right in that kind of battle, and I'm not sure that that's necessarily what Jocelyne needed at the time, but yeah, you just don't know what's next, and so you start scrambling for that information, and it's going to be okay, but then you're scared, and so you don't want to, like Jocelyne says, you're not trying to get everybody else terrified of the unknown.
Well, and one of the elements too is that, Jocelyne, not only is it a physical toll on you because you're fighting an illness, but it's an emotional toll too. I mean, you've described having to tell each of your kids individually, etc. Why is it important that we focus on that emotional element too?
Well, it's such a huge part of what you're going through because there are so many unanswered questions, and as you're going through it, all the thoughts in your head, there's so many unknowns, and that is why it's so fearful, right? And and then you're feeling all these emotions. You're overwhelmed. Your head is spinning. You are scared. You are angry. You just don't understand it. You don't understand it, and so it's important to have somebody there that does understand the disease and that understands the toll that it takes on you, both emotional and physical. And so just having that compassion and that empathetic personality to help you through and really help you work through all those feelings and emotions and the whirlwind of crazy thoughts going through your head.
You turned to cancer coaching to try and help with some of that, to help with the whirlwind of emotions and questions that you had. What kind of a difference did that make for you? And what do you remember about your first time walking into a cancer coaching session?
Wow, I had tried other resources, and unfortunately, they had more of a negative effect. And so I was very skeptical walking into Bonnie's office, and she was incredible. From the minute I walked in and the first few words she said to me, I knew right away that she completely understood where I was coming from. And she was asking the right questions. And so they were quite pertinent to how I was feeling and everything I was going through. And she was incredible with giving me tangible resources to work with. So I had somebody who was an advocate for what I was going through. And that was absolutely priceless for me.
Wayne, you were a part of that journey. You were also in on some of the coaching sessions. What difference did it make for you?
I think that it, from my perspective, it was this feeling of helplessness that, what can I do? You want to do something, but you also feel like you're being a burden because you just don't know exactly either what to say or what to do. So I think the cancer coaching helped us communicate on a level that allowed me to understand what Jocelyne was going through, as opposed to assume or to, as I said earlier, to take it on myself and think that, okay, I'm going to, force the issue when really that's not what Jocelyne needed. So I think it just helped navigate that, again, all the uncertainties that go along with it. And I'd been to enough appointments with her from a medical perspective, and I mean, she always looks great, and so you walk in and somebody goes, you look great, but I knew that she wasn't feeling great, like emotionally, so.
It must be such a relief to know, especially when this is such an emotional time for your family, that there is a place that you can turn to get that support and to feel like you're walking side by side with someone who's helping guide you. Did your other family members take part in it as well? Were you able to, is it the type of program where you can bring your kids along on this journey with you?
You definitely can. I think that what it gave us, and Jocelyne can speak to it as well, is the ability to, speak to the kids. I mean, they didn't necessarily come to the sessions or participate in that way, but it gave us the tools, it gave us the tools to be able to, to speak to them in a way that brought them along in the journey, as opposed to scared them or kept them on the periphery, right? They were able to not be along for the ride, but to understand what the ride entailed.
Mm-hmm. Were there concrete examples of how it helped each of you in your daily lives?
Yeah, I think with respect to Wayne wanting to fix everything, he's such a positive individual. He's self-motivated and hardworking, and he's always there to support and help everybody in any way he can. And so it was great that he was positive, but sometimes it wasn't what I needed, right? And so, my cancer coach helped me learn how to communicate a little bit differently and just to be able to put out what my needs were, because that's not something that comes naturally to me. I mean, as a mom, we're constantly putting our needs aside
for our kids and that sort of thing. And so to be able to ask or suggest and change the way that we've been doing things for so many years, it wasn't easy, but under the direction of the cancer coach, it was so helpful in so many ways, and it brought so much hope to all of us with respect to knowing that the support was there to help us work through it.
I think she's being kind. It helped manage me in the sense that she was managing so much physically and emotionally that she didn't need somebody else to manage, in terms of me trying to be well-intentioned but maybe overbearing or not truly understanding exactly where she was at that point in time. So it certainly gave us the tools to, for me to understand what kind of support she needed and when she needed that, as opposed to taking over. It's a very personal thing. I've learned through the cancer coaching how personal the cancer experience is to each individual. So as much as I'm there to support, I'm still not the one going through it. It's still not, in my body. So it's a subtle thing, but I think it makes a huge difference in just how it works as far as supporting somebody who's going through that.
Jocelyne, what do you want people to know?
I want them to know that they're not alone. There are people here that can help them work through their journey and help them focus on what they need to work with. I want them to know that there's hope. I walked out of here after my first appointment with Bonnie, and I was so enthusiastic, and I hadn't felt that way in so long. And just having that hope of the knowledge, knowing that there's someone out there who truly understands. And so, yeah, you're not alone. Reach out. This is something that is so necessary for people who are struggling with this disease.
Jocelyne, I think you have some final words that you would like to say to our audience this morning.
I would like to ask each one of you watching this morning to please close your eyes for a moment. Think about what the word hope means to you. Hope, a 4-letter word that can mean so much. We always hope for the best. We hope our kids grow up to become great adults. We hope our favorite sports team wins a championship. We hope our lives are full of fulfillment. I can tell you firsthand, hope means something completely different to someone with cancer. Hope means an extra day with our kids or family. Hope means we get to make it to their graduation or wedding day. Hope means we live another day. Hope is ultimately our lifeline. Hope shines sunlight on dark days. Hope is everything to families affected by cancer. Hope is also why each of you decide to show up here this morning. Hope, a 4-letter word packed so full of meaning. Please open your eyes. Over the past 6 months, the COVID pandemic has shown us what can be done when we come together for a common goal and commit towards a cause to improve the health of others. We hope the same sense of togetherness can help us fight cancer here today. Because of the commitment of others from previous events like this very one you are attending this morning, I can stand here today and tell you how it's impacted me. Now more than ever, we need to come together to ensure the doors for hope stay open for the thousands of patients and their families in our community who need to know their community is fighting for them. Your donations today are an investment in hope. Your donations today will ensure programs like cancer coaching are there for patients and their families like they were for me. Your donations will directly impact the type of care cancer patients in our very own community will receive. Care you may not think you'll ever need, but could one day. Your donations will ensure cancer trials and research stay a priority. As we know, these new breakthroughs and treatment options provide hope and save lives. All these things happen because we've come together, and we must continue to do so. I ask you now to join forces for those in your community fighting cancer and show up for hope this morning by making a donation. I would like to respectfully ask that you click on the donation button below and make a gift that is equal to a cup of coffee a day at Starbucks, $2.75. That's $83.34 a month, or a single gift today of $1,000. Please, let's work together to stop cancer, to hope for a future where we may sit here one day and celebrate the end of this disease. Thank you.
Jocelyne and Wayne, I really want to thank you both for your time today and for your leadership on this issue and for sharing your story with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it has been quite a breakfast, hasn't it? We've heard from the medical community, we've heard from community leaders, and we've heard from people directly impacted by a cancer diagnosis. It's clear that there's so much more to be done, but also that this is a community which is committed to making a difference, committed to ensuring that the very best in cancer technology and care is available right here for Ottawa area residents. We are profoundly grateful to everyone in the audience for your donations and your generosity, which all go towards supporting exceptional cancer care for our loved ones, our friends, our neighbors, ourselves. Thank you. And now, I'm delighted to welcome Ian Sherman back to offer final comments this morning. Over to you, Ian.
As you sit at home watching this program today, I'd like to thank all of you for attending and making the decision to be involved in a cause that is greater than yourself and about the people you know that have been affected by cancer. This morning, we've heard from the doctors who are working tirelessly, researching a cure and better treatments. We've heard from those living with cancer and their stories. Your support today won't just help fund research, clinical trials, and cancer coaching. It will ignite hope. You are showing them that you are here to fight for their future, and we have much more work to do. We need to continue to work together to push for advances and discoveries that will give the people we love better outcomes. We need to invest in cancer coaching so that families can start to heal. We've witnessed today how all of these things make a difference to those fighting cancer. We've also heard about the impact the Ottawa Regional Cancer Foundation has made over the years and how it is an integral part of improving cancer care in our community. Merci, mesdames et messieurs, d'être parmi nous aujourd'hui. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us today, for your time, and for your generosity in ensuring that top-notch cancer care is a hallmark of this city. Thank you to our event sponsors for your ongoing support. Thank you to our table captains who embrace the new virtual format and show us what great community leaders we have right here in Ottawa. On behalf of every one of us who hopes for a future without cancer, thank you. Together, we can make a difference. Thank you. Merci.